The heart monitor went silent. Then the alarm screamed. Dr. Claire Ashford stood frozen over the operating table, staring at the patient whose chest had stopped moving. The surgical team turned to her, eyes wide, hands waiting, desperate for orders. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because the last time she held a scalpel, they called her a killer. They stripped her license. They destroyed her life with lies. And now, after 1,095 days of serving coffee and hiding in shame, she was back, standing in an operating room with a dying patient and a team that trusted her. What if I forget? What if my hands don't remember? What if I kill someone again? 3 seconds of paralyzing terror. Then something inside her snapped awake. Stark compressions. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Push 1 milligram epinephrine. Suction the airway. Check the oxygen line. Now, her hands moved with surgical precision. Fast, controlled, certain. But her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. Wait, if you're just finding this story now, you need to understand how we got here. 3 months ago, Claire was a waitress hiding from her past. Then a billionaire's daughter collapsed in the restaurant where she worked, and Claire had to make a choice that changed everything. If you haven't watched part 1, pause this video right now and go watch it first. The link is in the description. Trust me, you need to know how a surgeon became a waitress before you see how a waitress became a surgeon again. I'll wait. For those of you who came back from part 1, welcome back. You know what Claire sacrificed to get here. Now let's see if her second chance survives what happens next. Outside in the waiting room, someone watched the surgery clock tick forward. Someone who had spent 3 years blaming Claire Ashford for destroying their family. Someone who had no idea the woman fighting to save a life in that operating room was the same woman they swore to destroy. In 48 hours, one of them would face an impossible choice: revenge or redemption. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to answer something. If someone destroyed your career with lies, humiliated you, erased you, stole everything you worked for, and then they got a second chance, would you forgive them? Or would you make absolutely sure they failed again? Be honest. Drop your answer below, because what happens in this story will challenge everything you think you know about forgiveness, justice, and second chances. 7 days after Claire Ashford walked back into Vanderbilt Memorial Hospital wearing surgical scrubs instead of a waitress apron, she still couldn't breathe properly. Her first week as a consulting ENT surgeon should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. Every morning at 5:47 a.m., she arrived before anyone else. She reviewed patient files 3 times, then a 4th, just to be sure. She stayed late every night, double-checking surgical notes, triple-verifying medication orders, terrified that one mistake would send her right back to serving coffee and hiding from her past. Her office was small but private. On the wall behind her desk hung her medical board reinstatement certificate, freshly framed. She kept it facing the wall, not because she wasn't proud, but because looking at it reminded her how close she'd come to never getting it back. The smell of antiseptic that used to comfort her now triggered something dark in her chest. Every time she heard surgical instruments being prepped, that metallic clink of scalpels on steel trays. Her hands trembled for just a second before she forced them steady. Her surgical scrubs felt both familiar and foreign, like wearing the skin of someone she used to be. The financial reality was better now. She earned $180,000 a year as a consulting surgeon. Her debt had dropped from $287,000 to $140,000. Her mother's hospice care was fully covered by the hospital's benefits package. She could breathe a little easier when she checked her bank account. Twice a week, she visited Victoria Hartwell for informal check-ins. The girl who'd been silent for 8 months was now volunteering at the hospital, helping other trauma patients find their voices again. Their friendship had become one of the few things that felt uncomplicated. But Claire avoided the doctor's lounge. That's where gossip lived, where whispers followed her. That's the one who lost her license. I heard she was serving tables last year. Can we really trust her? On Thursday morning during rounds, Claire noticed something. Nurse Jennifer Walker was moving differently. Her gait slightly off. Her voice pitched lower than usual. A subtle tremor in her hands when she reached for a clipboard. Jennifer, Claire said quietly after rounds. How long have you been feeling tired? Having trouble with temperature regulation? The nurse blinked. How did you? Your thyroid. You need blood work. Today. 3 days later. The test confirmed early stage Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Caught early. Treatable. The surgical team talked about it for a week. Dr. Ashford diagnosed it just by watching her walk. Respect, slowly, started to replace suspicion. But on her desk sat a manila folder she hadn't opened yet. Red stamp across the front. Urgent. High-profile case. She told herself she'd open it tomorrow. She told herself she wasn't afraid. She was lying. On Friday morning, hospital administrator Dr. Patricia Chen appeared in Claire's office doorway, holding that same manila folder. Dr. Ashford, we need to talk about the Brennan case. Claire's stomach tightened. The senator's son? Dr. Chen nodded and dropped the folder on Claire's desk. 19-year-old Dylan Brennan, college athlete, vocal cord damage from a sports injury 6 months ago. He's had 4 surgeries. All failed. His parents are desperate, influential, and not particularly patient. Claire opened the file. Medical images showed severe scarring, damaged tissue. Failed repairs stacked on top of each other like a collapsed building. Why me? Claire asked. Because you're the best, Dr. Chen said simply. And because they specifically requested you after hearing about the Victoria Hartwell case. That afternoon, the Brennan family arrived. Senator Michael Brennan entered the conference room like he owned it. Security detail flanking him. Expensive suit perfectly tailored. Voice trained to command attention. He spoke in political sound bites, treated nurses like furniture, checked his watch every 3 minutes. His wife, Rebecca Brennan, was quieter. She wore a black dress and pearl earrings, sat with perfect posture, and said almost nothing. But her eyes never left Claire's face, watching, judging, waiting. Then Dylan walked in, 19 years old, broad shoulders, athlete's build, wearing a college hoodie and headphones. His eyes were hollow, defeated. He carried a tablet with a text-to-speech app open. Claire introduced herself. Dylan typed a response. Another doctor. Great. Let me guess. You can fix what 4 others couldn't. I don't know yet, Claire said honestly, but I'm going to try. Senator Brennan interrupted. Try isn't good enough. My son had a future. Division I scholarship. Recording contract waiting. Now he can't even order coffee without typing it out. Dylan's jaw clenched. He typed furiously. Stop talking about me like I'm not here. For a moment, Senator Brennan looked genuinely hurt. He reached over and put his hand on his son's shoulder. When he thought no one was listening, his voice broke. I'd give up the Senate tomorrow if it meant hearing him sing again. Claire saw it then. Beneath the political armor was just a terrified father. Standing beside her, Dr. Marcus Webb, her assigned surgical resident, brilliant but cocky, whispered, You really think you can fix this? For surgeons already failed. Claire ignored him and focused on Dylan's scans. That's when she saw it, something the other 4 surgeons had missed. The pre-op examination room was small and cold. Dylan sat on the exam table, while Claire reviewed his imaging on the light board. Senator Brennan scrolled through his phone. Dr. Webb took notes. Rebecca Brennan stood by the window, silent as a ghost. Claire pointed to the scans. Dylan, I need to run additional tests before we discuss surgical options. There's something here that... Rebecca's voice cut through the room like broken glass. You. Claire turned. Rebecca was staring at her. face drained of all color, hands trembling. "Yes, Mrs. Brennan?" Claire said carefully. "You're Claire Ashford?" "Yes, I'm Dr. Ashford." "I'll be." "You killed my sister." The room went dead silent. Claire's stomach dropped to the floor. Dr. Webb froze mid-sentence. Senator Brennan looked up from his phone. Dylan stopped typing. Rebecca took a step forward, voice shaking with rage and grief. Emma Richardson. You killed her 3 years ago with your experimental procedure. You were reckless. You destroyed my family." Claire's heart hammered so hard she thought her ribs might crack. "Mrs. Brennan, don't." Rebecca's voice broke. "Don't you dare defend yourself. The medical board revoked your license because you were dangerous. I testified at your hearing. I told them what you did. And now you're standing here pretending to be qualified to operate on my son." Senator Brennan stood up slowly. "Rebecca, what are you? This is the doctor who killed Emma." Rebecca's voice rose to a scream. "This is the woman who destroyed our family. And you want her to touch Dylan." Claire couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't move, because Rebecca was right about one thing. She had testified at the hearing. Claire remembered her face, the grieving sister holding a photograph of Emma, voice breaking as she told the board, "Dr. Ashford's arrogance killed my sister." That testimony had been the final nail in Claire's professional coffin. But Rebecca was wrong about everything else. Claire knew the truth. Emma Richardson hadn't died because of surgical error. She died from an undiagnosed genetic condition, hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia. The autopsy had proven it, but the records were sealed as part of the legal settlement. Claire couldn't defend herself without violating patient confidentiality agreements that could land her in prison. "Mrs. Brennan," Senator Brennan said carefully, "I read about the Simmons case. Dr. Ashford's license was reinstated. The accusations were—" "I don't care." Rebecca shouted. "My sister is dead. And this woman," she pointed at Claire with shaking finger, "was the last person to touch her before she died." Dylan typed something on his tablet. The robotic voice read, "Mom, stop." But Rebecca wasn't listening. "I want her removed from this case. Now, I want a different surgeon. Your son has the same condition your sister had." Claire's voice cut through the chaos. Quiet, steady, final. Everyone turned to stare at her. "Dylan's scans show early markers of hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia," Claire continued, her voice calm even though her hands were shaking. "It's a genetic vascular disorder. It's what killed Emma. And if Dylan doesn't get surgery from someone who knows what to look for, he'll die the same way she did." Rebecca's face went white. Senator Brennan grabbed Dylan's file. "What are you saying?" Claire met Rebecca's eyes. "Mrs. Brennan, I understand your pain. I understand why you hate me. But your son has the same genetic time bomb your sister had. And I'm the only surgeon in this hospital who's seen it before. If you want Dylan to survive, you need to let me save him." The room was silent except for the sound of Rebecca Brennan trying not to collapse. In that moment, Claire Ashford stopped protecting herself and chose truth over safety. And Rebecca Brennan had no idea the woman she blamed for her sister's death was the only person who could prevent history from repeating itself. 2 hours later, Claire sat in the hospital conference room, surrounded by people who wanted answers. Hospital Ethics Board, Senator Brennan, Rebecca, the Brennan family attorney, Dr. Chin, Dr. Webb, and Jonathan Hartwell, who'd arrived with his legal team the moment Claire called him. Claire had requested an emergency meeting. She'd petitioned the court to unseal Emma Richardson's medical records. The judge had granted it, barely, on the grounds that Dylan's life was at stake. Now the truth was about to come out. Claire stood at the head of a table, pulled up Emma's autopsy report on the screen. "Emma Richardson died 3 years ago," Claire began, her voice steady even though her hands weren't. "The medical board was told she died from surgical complications during my procedure. That's what Dr. Richard Simmons reported. That's what you were told. She looked at Rebecca. That's what you testified to. Rebecca's jaw was clenched so tight it looked painful. But that wasn't true, Claire continued. She pulled up the autopsy findings. Emma had undiagnosed hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia, HHD. It's a genetic vascular disorder. Her blood vessels were fragile, malformed. During surgery, one ruptured. There was nothing I could do. She would have died regardless of who operated. Then why did Simmons say? Senator Brennan started. Because I raised concerns about Emma's symptoms before surgery, Claire said. I documented them. I recommended genetic testing. Dr. Simmons dismissed my concerns as paranoia. When Emma died, he falsified the surgical notes to hide that he'd ignored warning signs. Jonathan's lawyer placed a stack of documents on the table. We have Dr. Simmons' original notes before they were altered. We have the autopsy report. We have testimony from 3 other doctors whose concerns Simmons dismissed and whose careers he destroyed when things went wrong. Rebecca's hands were shaking. He lied to us? He lied to everyone, Jonathan said quietly, including the medical board, including me. Claire pulled up Dylan's scans. Your son shows early markers of the same condition. Abnormal vascular patterns in the throat tissue. Fragile vessel walls. If he undergoes surgery without accounting for HHD, he'll hemorrhage on the operating table exactly like Emma did. Dr. Webb stared at the scans with new understanding. You've been carrying this for 3 years, knowing the truth, but unable to defend yourself. Claire didn't answer that. Senator Brennan stood up. I need proof, not just documents. I need genetic testing. Jonathan interrupted. I'll fund it. Full panel. We can have results in 48 hours. Dylan doesn't have 48 hours, Claire said. His scans show active deterioration. We have maybe 72 hours before the damage becomes permanent. Rebecca finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. You knew. 3 years ago, you knew Emma had this condition. I suspected, Claire said. I couldn't prove it before she died and after. The records were sealed. I couldn't defend myself without violating confidentiality. Tears streamed down Rebecca's face. I testified against you. I stood in front of that board and said you killed my sister. I helped destroy your career. Her voice broke. For something you didn't do. Claire's throat tightened. You lost your sister. You needed someone to blame. I understand. No, Rebecca whispered. No, you don't understand. I destroyed you, and now you're trying to save my son. The room was silent. 3 years ago, the medical board hearing. Claire sat at the defendant's table, her lawyer beside her, watching her career die in real time. Rebecca Brennan took the witness stand. She held a photograph of Emma, young, smiling, full of life. Emma was my little sister, Rebecca said, her voice breaking. I raised her after our parents died. She trusted Dr. Ashford. We all did, and Dr. Ashford's arrogance, her experimental procedure, killed her. The board members' faces hardened. Jonathan Hartwell, sitting in the donor representative seat, made notes. Claire wanted to scream the truth, wanted to show them Simmons' lies. But her lawyer had warned her. The settlement agreement forbid her from discussing specifics. Speaking up meant prison. So she sat there silent while Rebecca Brennan's testimony destroyed her. I'm asking this board to revoke Dr. Ashford's license permanently, Rebecca finished, tears streaming down her face. So no other family has to bury someone because of her. The vote was 8-4. Claire walked out of that hearing room with nothing. Claire looked at Rebecca across the conference table. Your son needs surgery that only I can perform, Claire said quietly. The question is, can you trust me? Rebecca buried her face in her hands and sobbed. Rebecca Brennan spent 3 years hating the wrong person. Now she has to trust that person with her son's life. What would you do? Could you forgive someone who you thought destroyed your family? Could you trust them with what matters most? Drop your answer below, because what happens next will test every boundary of grief, guilt, and redemption. The 72-hour countdown began. Claire assembled her surgical team in the conference room. 8 specialists, 2 anesthesiologists, Dr. Webb as primary assist. But word had spread through the hospital. Whispers in hallways, gossip in the break room. Did you hear? The Brennan case. Dr. Ashford operated on the aunt 3 years ago. The patient died. Conflict of interest, don't you think? Can she really be objective? Some doctors openly questioned whether Claire should operate. Too much emotional baggage. Too much history. Claire ignored them and focused on the scans. Then Victoria Hartwell appeared in her office doorway. I heard about Dylan, Victoria said. Can I talk to him? Claire looked up surprised. Victoria, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Victoria's voice was firm. He thinks his life is over because he can't speak. I know what that feels like. That afternoon, Victoria sat with Dylan in his hospital room. Dylan typed, "Why are you here?" "Because 3 months ago I was you," Victoria said. "I hadn't spoken in 8 months. I thought my voice was gone forever. I thought my life was over." Dylan stared at her. "Dr. Ashford saved me," Victoria continued. "Not just my voice. She taught me that silence doesn't protect you from pain. And she showed me that the people who judge you don't know your story." Dylan typed slowly, "She killed my aunt." "No," Victoria said firmly. "She tried to save your aunt. She tried to save her the same way she's trying to save you. Don't let lies steal your future like silence stole my voice." Dylan's hands hovered over his tablet for a long time before he finally typed, "I'm scared." "Me too," Victoria admitted. "But being scared and being dead are 2 different things." Late that night, Claire sat alone in her office reviewing Emma Richardson's old files. The guilt was crushing, not because she'd caused Emma's death, but because she hadn't fought harder to save her, hadn't pushed back against Simmons, hadn't demanded the genetic testing that might have revealed the truth in time. Her phone buzzed. Text from the hospice. "Your mother is asking for you." Claire drove to Magnolia Gardens at midnight. Her mother, Sarah Montgomery, former nurse, dying slowly from late-stage cancer, was awake and lucid. "Tell me about the case," her mother whispered. Claire explained everything. Emma, Rebecca, Dylan, the impossible choice. Her mother took Claire's hand. "Some battles you can't win the first time, but the second chance? That's grace. Don't waste it. What if I fail again?" Claire whispered, "Then you fail trying to save a life instead of hiding from one." Meanwhile, Rebecca Brennan couldn't sleep. She spent the night calling other families connected to Dr. Simmons' cases. 12 families. 12 stories of lies, cover-ups, destroyed careers. By dawn, she understood. She'd been manipulated, used, turned into a weapon against the one doctor who'd actually tried to help. But there was one more revelation she hadn't discovered yet. Dr. Richard Simmons wasn't finished destroying Claire Ashford. He'd been feeding information to medical malpractice lawyers, building a case against Claire's reinstatement, waiting for her to fail. And he was using the Brennan case as his final revenge. Rebecca Brennan asked to meet Claire 24 hours before the surgery. She did not do it in the senator's office. She did not do it in a conference room with lawyers and paperwork. She did it in the hospital chapel. The chapel was small and quiet, lit by a few candles and a soft lamp near the front. The air smelled like old wood, wax, and quiet prayers people never said out loud. Claire stepped in and saw Rebecca sitting alone in the first row, hands clasped so tight her knuckles looked white. When Rebecca turned, her eyes were already red. "I needed to see where you couldn't hide behind charts," Rebecca said. Her voice shook, "and where I couldn't hide behind anger." Claire did not sit right away. She stood near the door, like she was ready to run if this became another trial. Rebecca swallowed hard. I need to understand, she whispered. Emma was my little sister. I raised her after our parents died. She was my baby, and when she died, they told me it was your fault. Rebecca's breath hitched. She stared at the altar like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I needed someone to blame, she said, because the other option was that life was just cruel, that she died for no reason, that I did everything right and still lost her. Claire's throat tightened. She finally sat 2 rows behind Rebecca, close enough to hear, far enough to protect herself. I wrote down Emma's symptoms, Claire said quietly. I noted what didn't add up. The small nosebleeds she brushed off, the way her voice tired too fast, the tiny red spots no one paid attention to. I asked for more tests. Rebecca turned slowly, and Dr. Simmons overruled me, Claire said. He told me I was overreacting. He told me I was wasting time. He told me to stop trying to look smarter than the attending. Claire held Rebecca's gaze. I tried to speak up again. He shut it down, not with logic, with power. Rebecca's face twisted. So you're saying Emma died because he didn't listen? I was saying Emma died because something was wrong inside her body that nobody caught in time, Claire replied. And I was saying I lived with that. Rebecca's lips trembled. But they told me the surgery did it. Claire nodded once. That's what the paperwork said. That's what the board heard. That's what you were led to believe. Rebecca stood up suddenly and faced Claire fully. I was the anonymous testimony, she said. I was the letter they read out loud. I was the one who wrote, "She is dangerous. Revoke her license forever." Claire's blood turned cold. Rebecca's voice cracked. I'm the reason you lost everything. The chapel went so quiet Claire could hear the soft hum of the building. And now you were trying to save my son, Rebecca continued, crying harder now. Why? Why would you do that after what I did to you? Claire's hands curled into fists in her lap. She did not shout. She did not accuse. But her voice came out firm. I was trying to save Dylan because he deserved a future, she said. This was not about forgiveness. It wasn't about redemption. It was about stopping the same tragedy from happening twice. Rebecca shook her head like she couldn't accept it. I can fix this, she pleaded. I can go public. I can recant my testimony. I can expose Simmons. My husband can put you on national TV. We can clear your name completely. Claire stared at her for a long moment. Then she said, I don't need public vindication. I need to save your son. Rebecca looked like she'd been slapped not by cruelty, but by truth. Outside the chapel door, Marcus, now a hospital volunteer and one of the few people who had watched Claire's whole journey, stood frozen. He had not meant to eavesdrop, but he had heard enough. A few minutes later, Marcus found Dr. Chun in the hallway and said, She's the real deal. This isn't about her ego. It isn't about her career. She just wants to save lives. Claire left the chapel and walked straight into the next disaster. Jonathan Hartwell was waiting near the elevators with his legal team. His face was tight, serious. Simmons filed an emergency injunction, Jonathan said. He's trying to stop the surgery. Claire's stomach dropped. On what grounds? He's claiming you're emotionally compromised, Jonathan replied. That you shouldn't operate on a family connected to your past case. Rebecca's face went blank. He's still doing this, she whispered. Jonathan looked at Claire. The hearing is at 4 p.m. today. Claire glanced at the surgery schedule in her hand. 6 a.m. tomorrow. She had to win in court before she could save Dylan in the operating room. And the clock did not care about anyone's pain. At 4 p.m., the injunction hearing moved fast, too fast for something that could decide whether a 19-year-old lived or died. Claire sat at the defense table beside her civil rights attorney, the same one who had helped reopen her case. Across the room sat Dr. Simmons' lawyer, calm and polished, as if this was just another meeting on his calendar. The judge looked tired. Counsel began. Simmons' lawyer stood. Your Honor, we're here because Dr. Claire Ashford is attempting to operate on a patient connected to a death that occurred under her care. She is emotionally involved. She is seeking redemption. That is not a medical plan. That is ego. Claire's jaw tightened. Her attorney placed a hand on her arm, a silent warning. Don't react. The lawyer continued. This surgery is high risk. Dr. Ashford has been out of practice. Her license was revoked. It is reckless to allow her to proceed when a conflict of interest exists. Then they brought in expert testimony. A surgeon Claire had never met took the stand and spoke like he was reading off a script. In my opinion, Dr. Ashford's decision-making may be impaired by trauma from her disciplinary history. Claire's attorney stood calmly when it was her turn. Your Honor, she said, this patient has a genetic vascular disorder. The window for intervention is 72 hours. Dr. Ashford has unique experience with this condition. No other surgeon at this hospital has documented expertise treating it at this level. Stopping the surgery is not caution. It is a death sentence. The judge leaned forward. And the alleged conflict? Claire's attorney didn't flinch. The conflict is grief, not competence. Grief belongs to the patient's family. Competence belongs to the operating room. Simmons' lawyer smirked. You can't separate them. That's when Rebecca Brennan stood up. Your Honor, she said, voice shaking. I need to speak. Her husband's face tightened. Rebecca? But Rebecca didn't sit down. She walked to the witness stand as if her feet had decided before her mind could stop them. She looked straight at the judge. 3 years ago, my sister died, she said, and I was told Dr. Ashford killed her. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. I believed it. I testified against her. I wrote the anonymous letter. I helped destroy her life. Claire's stomach dropped again, because hearing it in court hurt worse than hearing it in a chapel. Rebecca took a breath. Dr. Simmons used my grief, she said. He fed me lies. He gave me paperwork I didn't understand. He pointed my pain at Dr. Ashford like a weapon. Simmons' lawyer jumped up. Objection. The judge raised a hand. Overruled. Continue. Rebecca turned slightly, looking at Claire for the first time without rage. Dr. Ashford had every reason to refuse this case, she said. Every reason. But she still chose my son's life over her own pain. That's not ego. That's heroism. The courtroom went quiet. Senator Brennan stood next, voice firm, controlled, political, but cracked to the edges. If my son dies because this court delayed necessary surgery, he said, I will make it my life's mission to expose every failure in this medical oversight system. The judge stared at the documents, the scans, the timelines. After a long pause, he spoke. Injunction denied. The judge said, surgery may proceed. However, an independent surgical monitor will be present. Full documentation is required, and a post-op review board will evaluate the procedure. Claire exhaled, but the relief didn't feel like relief. It felt like borrowed time. Outside, she walked through the hospital parking garage alone. The concrete walls echoed with distant footsteps and the faint sound of traffic. Her hands started shaking, not from fear of the surgery, from everything she had held down for 3 years. She slid down the wall and sat on the cold floor, pressing her palm to her mouth like she could keep herself from breaking apart. She called the hospice. No answer. She called again. A nurse finally answered, voice gentle. Dr. Ashford, your mother isn't responsive right now. Claire's breath hitched. What does that mean? It means she's close, the nurse whispered. Claire stared at the phone screen until it blurred. That was when Victoria found her. Victoria didn't say much at first. She just sat down on the concrete beside Claire like she belonged there, like she wasn't afraid of the mess. You saved me when you had every reason to walk away, Victoria said softly. Now let me help you. Claire tried to speak. Nothing came out. Victoria reached into her bag and pulled out an old nursing badge, scuffed, worn, but carefully cleaned. Sarah Montgomery, RN. Your mom told me to give you this before surgery, Victoria said. She said, tell Claire healing hands run in our family. Claire took it like it was fragile glass. And the moment she held it, she remembered. Claire's medical school graduation had been a bright day with too many cameras and too many people pretending they understood how hard she had fought to get there. Her mother stood in the crowd wearing her best dress, eyes shining. When Claire walked across the stage, her mother cried like she was watching a miracle. Later, in a quiet corner of the auditorium, her mother held Claire's white coat and pinned the nursing badge to it, right near the heart. This badge represents 37 years of caring for people, Sarah had whispered. Now you carry it forward as a doctor. Claire had laughed, embarrassed. Mom, this is yours. Her mother had shaken her head. It's ours. Never forget this. Medicine isn't about perfection. It's about showing up when people need you most. Then the memory shifted. The day Emma Richardson died, Claire had come home late with blood in the lines of her hands that soap wouldn't erase. She had stood in her mother's kitchen shaking, trying to explain what happened. I told them something was wrong, Claire had whispered. I told them, and they didn't listen. And now she's dead. Her mother had pulled her into a hug, so tight it hurt. You can't save everyone, Claire Bear, Sarah had said, but you can show up and try. That's all any healer can do. Claire had sobbed into her mother's shoulder. They're going to blame me. Her mother's voice had stayed calm. Then you stand in truth, even if your voice shakes. Back in the parking garage, Claire stood up slowly. She wiped her face. She looked at Victoria, then at the badge in her hand. Then she called her surgical team. We operated at dawn, she told them. I needed everyone at their best. This wasn't just about Dylan Brennan. It was about proving second chances mattered for patients and doctors alike. The hospital felt different before dawn. The halls were quieter. The lights were softer. The world outside the windows was still dark. Claire scrubbed in at 5:12 a.m. Warm water ran over her hands. Soap, brush, rinse. Again and again. This time, her hands were steady. Around her, 12 specialists gathered because Dylan's case was too dangerous for anyone's ego. Dr. Webb stood near the sink beside her, looking nervous for the first time since Claire met him. I wanted to be primary assist, Webb said quietly. Claire glanced at him. Why? Because I doubted you, he admitted. I thought your comeback was a headline. I was wrong. Teach me. Claire didn't smile. She just nodded once. Then keep your eyes open and your mouth shut when it matters. Down the hall, Victoria sat with Dylan in pre-op. Dylan's tablet rested on his lap. His hands shook as he typed. Victoria helped him record a voice message. His phone held up like it was sacred. If something goes wrong, the robotic text-to-speech voice said, tell them I love them. If it works, tell Dr. Ashford thank you for giving me another chance at my dreams. Victoria swallowed hard. You're going to say it yourself, she promised. Then Simmons hit them from the outside. At 5:40 a.m., news vans lined up outside the hospital entrance like sharks. Someone had tipped them off. Headlines appeared online before the first incision. Disgraced doctor returns to operate on family linked to past death. The optics were poison. Inside the hospital, nurses checked their phones and whispered. Doctors paused in hallways. Security got tense. Senator Brennan responded the only way he knew how, publicly. He stepped to the cameras in the cold morning air, jaw clenched, voice sharp. My son is not a headline, he said. He is a human being. Dr. Ashford is not a villain. She is a surgeon who was nearly destroyed by lies, and we will expose the person behind those lies. Jonathan Hartwell stood beside him, face hard with purpose. Dr. Ashford saved my daughter when 21 specialists failed, Jonathan said. She deserves our trust, not our suspicion. But inside the hospital, The real danger was not the cameras. It was a scan. Minutes before surgery, updated imaging came in. The vessels in Dylan's throat were more fragile than expected. The condition was worse. The anesthesiologist looked at Claire. If these vessels rupture, it's catastrophic. We're talking 40% chance of bleed out. Rebecca stood in the corner like her body had turned to stone. She faced an impossible choice. Stop the surgery and keep Dylan alive, but voiceless forever. Or let Claire operate and risk burying her son the way she buried her sister. Rebecca walked to Dylan's bedside, hands shaking. "I can't lose you," she whispered. Dylan typed. The tablet spoke for him, calm and clear. "I'd rather die trying to sing again than live forever in silence," it said. "Let her operate." Rebecca broke. She kissed his forehead. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, do it." Then Claire's phone buzzed. "Hospice." The nurse's voice was gentle and devastating. "Dr. Ashford, it might be hours." Claire closed her eyes. For 1 second, she saw her mother's face. The badge, the hug, the words show up, and she knew what the world would judge either way. Victoria stepped in before Claire could fall apart. "Your mother told me what she'd want," Victoria said firmly. "She'd want you in that or saving a life. I'll sit with her. I'll make sure she's not alone." Claire's lips trembled. She nodded once. "Thank you." Then she turned toward the operating room. Claire Ashford faced an impossible choice. Her dying mother or her patient. There was no right answer. Only the choice she could live with. What would you have done? And before you answer, subscribe if you're not already, because the next 20 minutes contain the most intense medical drama in this entire series. The operating room clock read 6:07 a.m. when Claire made the first incision. The independent surgical monitor stood behind the glass, eyes sharp, pen ready, watching every move like he was hunting for failure. Claire didn't look up. She focused on Dylan, on the tissue, on the quiet truth that surgery didn't care about reputation. It only cared about precision. The first hour went smoothly, then the second, then the third. Sweat collected beneath Claire's surgical cap. Her shoulders burned. Her hand stayed steady. Dr. Webb followed her movements like a student learning a language he didn't know he needed. At hour 4, Claire paused. She stared at something that didn't match the scans. "Hold suction," she said. Webb obeyed instantly. Claire leaned closer. Her eyes narrowed. "What is it?" the anesthesiologist asked. Claire didn't answer right away. She traced the problem with a gloved finger, careful and calm. Then she said, "This isn't just HHD." The room went colder. She found scar tissue, wrong scar tissue. Not just damage from the injury. Not just natural healing. This scar tissue was placed like a mistake. Like someone had tied a knot in Dylan's future and walked away. "Pull the previous operative notes," Claire said. A nurse moved quickly, bringing up the record on the monitor. Claire's eyes scanned it. Then she froze, because the surgeon's name on the last operation wasn't one of the 4 doctors the Brennans had mentioned. It was Dr. Richard Simmons. Claire's chest tightened. "Simmons operated on him 8 months ago," Webb whispered, stunned. Claire's voice stayed flat, and he botched it. The word sounded insane to say out loud, but the evidence sat right there inside Dylan's throat. A repair done wrong. A structure tightened too far. Tissue pulled in a way that had slowly strangled Dylan's vocal cords over months. Simmons hadn't just hurt Dylan. He had set him up to fail. And if Claire hadn't found it, the HHT procedure would have failed too. Webb's voice shook. "If you hadn't seen this, it would have killed him," Claire finished. The independent monitor called Senator Brennan to the observation room. Senator Brennan arrived pale, eyes wide, watching the screen through glass. The monitor showed him the operative notes, the signature, the evidence inside his son's body. Senator Brennan's lips parted. "I trusted Simmons," he whispered. "He operated on my son. He heeded this." Claire heard nothing of that conversation. She stayed in the work, But in her mind, something snapped into place. Simmons hadn't destroyed her career randomly. He had targeted her because she saw patterns, because she asked questions, because she noticed what other people missed. Emma Richardson, Dylan Brennan. Two lives connected by one surgeon's pride. Two tragedies tied together by cover-ups. Simmons wasn't just jealous. He was dangerous. And Claire was the one person who could prove it. Hour 6 became hour 7. The most delicate part began. Claire had to repair Dylan's vocal cords, manage fragile vessels, and undo Simmons' hidden damage, all without causing catastrophic bleeding. Then the earpiece in Claire's ear crackled. It was Victoria. Her voice came through, soft and shaking. "Dr. Ashford, your mother just passed," Victoria whispered. She was holding my hand. Her last words were, "Tell Claire I'm proud. Tell her to finish what she started." Claire's hands did not shake, but tears flooded her eyes behind the protective shield. For a second, Dr. Webb saw her chest rise sharply, like she was swallowing a scream. "Do you need a moment?" Webb whispered. "We can—" Claire's voice came out low, controlled, dangerous. "No." Then she said the words that defined who she really was. "My mother spent 37 years showing up for patients even when her own life was falling apart," Claire said. "I finished this surgery. We grieved after." The room went quiet except for the steady beeping of the monitor. Claire's body felt like it was floating, like grief had separated her mind from her hands. But her hands stayed with Dylan. Then the impossible moment arrived. A vessel pulsed in the wrong place. Too close, too fragile. A modern technique would risk tearing it. Claire made a different choice. She used an old-school method her mother had taught her from nursing days. Something about pressure, angle, patience. Something that required calm hands and stubborn hope. The room watched. Webb held his breath. The anesthesiologist leaned forward. Claire's fingers moved with quiet certainty. And it worked. The bleeding stopped. The repair held. Dylan's vitals stabilized. Hour 10 turned into hour 11. When the final stitch was placed, Claire stepped back. "It's done," she said. She removed her mask slowly and looked toward the independent monitor behind the glass. "Document that every decision I made was correct," Claire said. "And document that Dr. Simmons nearly killed this patient 8 months ago." Then she walked out of the operating room. And the moment the doors closed behind her, her legs gave out. She collapsed in the hallway like she had been holding herself together with pure willpower and finally ran out. Rebecca Brennan was there. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say I'm sorry. She just knelt down and held Claire while Claire cried loud, broken sobs for her mother, for Emma, and for 3 years of carrying blame that wasn't hers. 3 days later, Dylan Brennan opened his eyes. His throat hurt. His body felt heavy. The hospital room smelled like plastic sanitizer and fear that had finally loosened its grip. A vocal therapist stood near the bed with a small device and a calm smile. "We're going to try something simple," she said. "No words, just a hum." Dylan nodded. His hands trembled as he lifted them, then dropped them again, like he didn't know what to do with hope. He breathed in, and he hummed 3 notes. Weak, rough, but real. Rebecca covered her mouth with both hands and started shaking. Senator Brennan stood stiff as a statue. Then his face broke, and tears ran down like he couldn't stop them. Dylan swallowed and tried again. Then a whisper came out. "Thank you," Dylan said, barely audible but clear. It wasn't even a full sentence, but it was a miracle. That same afternoon, Senator Brennan held a press conference, this time not to protect optics, but to burn down lies. He stood at the podium with a stack of documents and a fury he didn't bother hiding. "Dr. Richard Simmons caused harm," Senator Brennan said. "He falsified notes. He covered up errors. He destroyed careers. He manipulated grieving families. And starting today, we are launching a full investigation. 8 families came forward within 48 hours. Parents, siblings, spouses, all telling the same story: confusion, grief, paperwork, and a doctor who always seemed to walk away clean. Legal justice moved fast once the truth had power behind it. Simmons was arrested for medical fraud, patient endangerment, and witness tampering. Civil lawsuits followed like an avalanche. The medical board, silent for years, finally spoke. They issued a public apology to Dr. Claire Ashford. They cleared her license fully. No restrictions. Full privileges. A public admission that her revocation had been wrong. It didn't bring her mother back. It didn't erase 3 lost years. But it stopped the lie from living forever. Rebecca Brennan stood beside Claire at a quiet meeting a week later. "I want to build something," Rebecca said, voice steady for the first time. "Something that makes sure this doesn't happen again." That was how the Emma Richardson Foundation was born, funding rare disease research and supporting doctors wrongfully accused of malpractice. Rebecca made Claire medical director, not as a favor, as a public confession. Claire had always been the one trying to do the right thing. Senator Brennan pushed legislation for medical board reform and patient advocacy protections. It became his new mission not because it looked good, but because his family had been dragged through the worst part of a broken system. Even Dr. Webb changed. He stood in front of the staff and said, "Dr. Ashford taught me being a surgeon isn't about reputation. It's about showing up when it's hard." But the story wasn't clean, because while Dylan healed, Claire's mother was gone. The funeral was small, quiet, and full of people who understood what it meant to show up. Victoria, Jonathan, Rebecca, Dylan's family, a few nurses, a few doctors, Dr. Chin. No press, no speeches, just love. Victoria sang Amazing Grace in a clear, strong voice. Her first time singing publicly since she'd lost her mother. The sound was steady, honest, alive. Claire stood near the grave, holding her mother's nursing badge and her own medical license in the same trembling hand. And she realized something that hurt and healed at the same time. Her mother had lived long enough to see her redeemed. That was grace. 6 weeks after surgery, Dylan sat in vocal therapy. A piano played soft notes. The therapist guided him through scales like she was rebuilding a house brick by brick. Claire watched from the corner, arms crossed, face calm, heart racing. Dylan's voice was rough at first. It cracked. It failed. It came back. He looked at his mother and father, then down at his hands, like he was afraid to hope too loudly. Then he said, "I want to sing something." Rebecca's eyes filled immediately. Senator Brennan lifted his phone without thinking, recording like a father who didn't trust miracles to last unless he captured them. Dylan breathed in, and he sang. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. He sang the song he had written for his Aunt Emma before she died. "You're still here," he sang, voice trembling. "In every place I go." Rebecca broke down completely. Not quiet tears, full body sobs that shook the room. Senator Brennan cried silently, filming through tears he didn't wipe away. When Dylan finished, the room stayed still for a moment, like even the air needed time to recover. After the session, Dylan handed Claire a small flash drive. "It's the recording," he said softly. "I want you to have it." Claire stared. "Why?" "Because you gave me back my voice," Dylan said. "And because I'm going to sing for her forever." On the label he had written, "To Dr. Ashford, who gave me back my voice. To Aunt Emma, who I'll sing for forever." Claire's throat tightened. She managed one sentence. "Your aunt will be proud," she said. "Not just of your voice, of your courage." Rebecca stepped closer, eyes swollen from crying. "How do you forgive?" Rebecca asked, "How do you move forward after everything?" Claire didn't pretend to have a clean answer. "I don't know if I've forgiven," Claire admitted. "But I learned carrying hatred is heavier than carrying grief, and I'd rather carry hope." Later, Claire and Victoria sat in the hospital garden. Trees swayed gently. The air smelled like grass and morning rain. Victoria looked at her. "You saved my voice," she said. "You saved Dylan's voice. But you saved something else too." Claire didn't respond. "You proved broken things can heal," Victoria finished. "That includes you." A week later, Jonathan offered Claire the chief of surgery role. Claire shook her head. "I'm not ready to lead. I'm still learning to trust myself again. But ask me in a year." Dr. Chen met Claire in the hallway after rounds. "You earned a place here," Dr. Chen said. "Not because of redemption. Because you're exceptional." Claire nodded once, and for the first time, that compliment didn't feel like a trap. Claire's journey from disgrace to redemption took 3 years and 2 impossible surgeries. But here's what hasn't been said. There are more stories like hers. Subscribe now, because next week's story starts in the same hospital, with a hidden expert and one mistake that could kill someone in minutes. 3 months later, Claire opened the doors to a small clinic with a simple sign: Second Chance Medical. It served uninsured patients. It served the overlooked. It served people who had been told they didn't matter. And it quietly hired doctors with complicated histories, people who had the skill but not the support. Dr. Webb volunteered his weekends. Other physicians Claire once admired, then watched get destroyed, showed up and asked for a place to start over. One afternoon, Claire visited her mother's grave. She brought a shadow box. Inside it sat her mother's nursing badge and her own medical license side by side. Claire placed it gently against the headstone like it belonged there. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "We proved healing hands run in the family." Victoria visited the clinic later that week, smiling in a way she hadn't been able to smile in part 1. "I got accepted," she said. "Music therapy program." Claire hugged her. Dylan released his debut single. All proceeds went to the Emma Richardson Foundation. His music video included a simple scene of him standing in a hospital hallway, looking at Claire like she was the reason he still existed. The caption read, "The doctor who saved my dreams." Rebecca Brennan quit her old life of events and appearances. She became a patient advocate and testified at medical board hearings, defending doctors facing accusations. Simmons faced sentencing, 8 years in prison, lifetime ban for medicine, restitution ordered. It looked like an ending. Then the letter came. A patient at County Memorial Hospital, Jane Doe, no family, no insurance. The letter said only one thing: "I heard you save people everyone else gives up on." Claire opened the attached medical notes. Her breath caught, because the handwriting looked familiar, too familiar. It matched someone from her past, someone who had testified against her 3 years ago and then disappeared like guilt had swallowed them whole. The note attached read, "Some debts can only be repaid with life." Claire didn't hesitate. She booked the surgery, because the cycle of redemption didn't end when the credits rolled. Dr. Claire Ashford lost everything 3 years ago. She rebuilt herself one surgery at a time. But here's the truth. Her story wasn't unique. There are hundreds of medical professionals destroyed by lies, working invisible jobs, carrying skills the world desperately needs. And nobody knows who they really are until a life is on the line. This channel finds those stories. This channel tells them, because second chances matter. If you made it this far, you're part of the small group that watches until the end. That means you're not just here for drama. You're here because you believe broken things can heal. So do 3 things right now. subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Comment the moment that hit you the hardest in this part. And tell us, have you ever gotten a second chance you didn't deserve or fought for one you did? Share this video with someone who needs hope, someone who thinks their past has already decided their future. 1 year later, Claire stood on a conference stage presenting a keynote. Second chances in medicine. Redemption, accountability, and healing. In the audience sat Rebecca, Dylan, now pre-med, Victoria, music therapist, Dr. Webb, chief resident, and Jonathan, hospital board chair. After the speech, a young doctor approached, shaking. "They destroyed my career last month," she whispered. "False accusations. I don't know how to fight back." Claire handed her a card. "Second chance, medical." "You're not alone," Claire said. "And this isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your comeback."